Hello and welcome to Scheduling and Logistics for Virtual Production. My name is Daniel Malik. I am the Director of Content and Innovation here at Vue, and we're really excited to dig into some conversation around what it takes to bring a virtual production to life. Everything from the day of the shoot to post-production, even a little bit of creative. So with that, I want to go ahead and introduce the rest of our panelists, starting with you, Kevin.
Hey, my name is Kevin DeLucia. I'm a visual effects supervisor.
I'm Megan Hill. I'm the General Manager of Vue Nashville and also the Executive Producer for Vue.
My name is Christy Reed and I'm the Director of Sales for Vue.
And what we wanted to do is we really just wanted to have a conversation about what goes into a project that shoots in virtual production, starting with the creative process all the way down to environment design, collaboration with our clients, and what that looks like. And so, to kick it off, I'm curious, Christy, especially with you, since you work directly with our clients as one of the entry points for them, what are people coming to you with in terms of what they're looking to execute, and why do they come to Vue?
So a lot of times the conversation begins with what's the right fit. And so people are always concerned of, I'm a little scared of what that's going to look like. And so we love to walk you through the process. And so we bring along VFX supervisors, executive producers along in the conversation to help you in the planning process so that as you're storyboarding, as you're concepting, we can help you lean into what really works and sells in virtual production. And so I think part of why people are coming to Vue for virtual production is we love to help you and guide you through that entire process so you don't feel alone and then just hope it turns out. So, we'll start having conversations about your creative, but then we'll bring in our team to lean in and say, what kind of works and sells well. And so that's where we would lean into, well, what kind of shot composure really helps art, virtual art, physical art, dimensionality of all of that. And so that's when I usually kick it back over to the team and we kind of collaborate together in the process of pre-pro.
And how often are clients coming to us and it's their first time shooting a virtual production versus they've done it once or several times before?
Right now, it's so new, especially in the commercial market and outside of the film industry, that it's 90% of our clients' first time. And then it's exciting to see them come back and learn from the first and apply it to the second. But most everyone, especially this year, it's been their first time venturing out into virtual production. It's a little scary because they're taking a risk not only with themselves, but on behalf of their client. So it's like several layers of firsts for everyone. And so we love helping with the education side of that to help put you at ease, make your shoot super successful, the end product very believable, if that's where, some people lean into reality and some people embrace the technology. You don't have to just do everything to trick the eye that it is on location. It can be something super abstract too, and it really is compelling content. So, but most of what we're seeing right now, it's everybody's first time.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So Megan, I'll pass this one off to you. Knowing that you are an EP and you lead our Nashville stage, once a project gets passed off to you to execute, what are some of the big questions or big things that you're helping people with throughout the creative process?
Yeah, so my goal, all of our goals, is to make sure that the shoot is successful, because if it's successful for them, it's successful for us, and we want to see our clients succeed, love it, and come back. So I'm just kind of walking them through the process, and some clients want a lot of help and a lot of creative input, and then some clients, kind of know what they're doing and don't need as much help from us, which is fine. We're really willing to be very available or step back a little bit. So I kind of just walk them through the process, keep checking in. We make sure to do a tech scout before the shoot if they're local or can come in and fly in. And so bringing in their DP and gaffers and director, really, and their artists, their art directors, making sure that we're all on the same page, because seeing it in person for the first time is much different than trying to see it, on a website or us try to explain what it is. And so getting the graphics up on the wall, sending them feedback, showing them, suggesting what could be different or what could help push it to another level, different things like that. And then also making sure that their art director and their virtual artists are working and collaborating together, because you have to make sure, and it's really fun to see the process of both art teams coming together. Sometimes it's one team, sometimes it's two teams coming together. And so sometimes the effects lead will have to do something on the wall, and then the art director has to match that. And sometimes the art director has to have something, so then the visual effects is matching that. So it's a really fun process and a really fun creative process. So I'm just kind of walking them alongside.
And it's never the same.
Every project is completely different.
Yeah,
yes.
no matter if you've done a dozen shoots on virtual production or it's your first one, it's always going to be a little bit different. And you brought up a really good point in that whenever we are working with a client for the first time, there are a lot of unknowns, and actually we learn a lot through that process as well. Our clients are often who have the best ideas of, what we can do on stages like this. And so, thinking through that process a little bit, you mentioned getting to come in and see the studio, to do some camera testing, to even look at different environments, plates versus being in engine, all those things. I found that a lot of times when someone is able to enter this room, they're able to see content on the screen. That is what unlocks ideas in a big way too. And you say, oh, I get it now. I get what's possible. You also learn the limits a little bit, which is really cool. Along those lines, I'm just curious if there are any like big standout projects or shoots that you've been a part of. I'll throw this one to you, Kevin, where you've been doing environment design, where you've really been able to use virtual production to expand the creative and as it relates to the environment.
Yeah, and like you said, there's, it's working with all aspects of the different departments within virtual production, and there are a select few productions that we've been on where the creative process kind of evolves as you're starting to do. You're going through your testing, or you're going through kind of your tech viz, your previs. The Motion Adrenaline and John Deere project was a good one that, where we started doing testing, we started seeing things on the wall. Well, that starts sparking ideas and what you can do differently in the environment. It was like, oh, this looks great over in this section, or, we need something in the foreground, or, even with ideas when it comes to the practical set environments, is kind of seeing how those kind of blend together. So, it is very important to kind of get things up on the wall as soon as possible, kind of see what you're dealing with, see what the space is like, and kind of get a feel for things. So, that creative process is ever going. So, even from starting with creative storyboards and initial concepts to, on the fly in the production, like you see things evolve, and there's decisions that are made on the set, on the fly, that kind of help enhance, those backgrounds.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I will say, the smooths that go really smooth are the ones that have their storyboards really laid out, and we can pivot from those a little bit, but they bring them in, they put them up on the wall, we're crossing them off, and a lot of that is more story-driven content. And a lot of times people come in here and have fun and, embrace the stage, and they're just having a great time shooting. And sometimes really awesome things come out of not planning, and you get inspired, in the moment, or but if you're trying to get a lot of content shot in one day and changing scenes and sets, having a storyboard, I think, is huge to get everyone on the same page, especially art.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the unknown that I deal with in the initial conversation before people commit to virtual production is, what changes. It's scary to think of, I've done pre-pro the same way my whole life, and now I don't get this. So the biggest changes in the pre-pro process is your post becomes your pre. A good decent amount of your post becomes your pre. And one of the hesitations and questions we get a lot is this just going to look like bad green screen? Or why wouldn't I just use green screen? And so there's a lot of power in ICVFX, but there's a lot of unknowns in the building process of the virtual art, because the power of everything coming together in camera is very different from what you're looking at on screen or in screen grabs. And so it's hard for people to visualize, okay, I see it like this, it still looks a little gamey. Can I trust that it's going to look like you tell me? And so that's where that optimization day, in-person previs days, it just really helps you understand how it all comes together in camera. Then once you're used to it, you can see past the page in planning. The other part of pre-pro that changes just slightly, you're really just running 2 simultaneous pre-pros. So another question I get is, well, I don't have time to pull off a virtual production shoot because it takes months. And it would be great. We would love months of planning, but that rarely happens. So I got this question a lot in the past couple of days of, how long do you usually have for a build? And my first instinct is to laugh.
For a virtual
for a virtual build, And the average that we're seeing right now is 3 weeks to a month out is when the conversation in the virtual build starts, from initial concept to full execution. So it can be done in a shorter amount of time. There's so many great resources out there that teams that Kevin works with can pull from to not have to build completely from scratch. But what you're essentially doing is, rather than working with one art department, you're bringing your VAD team and your physical art team together to work in unison and bring together 2 art sets. And the seaming of that is the magic of what happens in camera and the magic of your gaffers, those kind of things. And so it's really just letting both sides of your brain work almost, as opposed to needing double the amount of time. And those are things, those are like hesitations and unknowns that I get in the initial conversations. And so, it's the expertise of these lovely people that will help you along the way to be able to manage thinking about both post and pre at the same time. And then also the trickery of, what are things we can do with the environment and the physical art that will help it not look like bad green screen or just another green screen. So I'm curious, when you're designing and people say, I want to do this mountain range, and that's all they give you, where do you lean in to help them, because they don't even know what to ask for sometimes. So how do you help them get answers to questions they don't know to ask?
Yeah, I think, from the start, to add to kind of what you're saying, where we kind of kick off with the creative, kind of the most important thing is to kind of see what the scope of the project is. What are you trying to achieve? What are your goals there? And then that will help determine like how your different various setups will work, what you need to design in your environments, and then how that would play into kind of your live action practical sets. And that creative process, like, coming from a traditional kind of pipeline, used to be very linear. But now it's like you're constantly going back and forth. You'll go back to creative while you're in production. You'll keep flip-flopping to kind of figure out, all right, what's the best solution for what we're trying to achieve. And so when it comes to getting the ball rolling on the design side for the environments, you do want to look at, all right, what resources do we have? Do we need to capture things with plates? Do we need a tracking system inside of Unreal? Do we need to be in a 3D space? All those kind of questions and ideas will help you get to that point of like how you want to design these environments. So initially, like it's scouring resources like Quixel Megascans, like seeing that digital prop house that they have is a wide variety of different things you could use in your environments to build them out, to get props in there to kind of design that stuff aesthetically. Another good one is Kitbash, or even the Unreal Marketplace. Like there's massive amounts of resources out there to kind of build your worlds. And then knowing the scope will kind of tell you how big do you need to make this world. And making sure that you're not overloading the scene, and making sure things are working efficiently. Your frame rates are at a good level to where you're not getting latency or your scene's not weighing you down, causing delays in production. So, this going back to the scope is something that is vital, just to know how you need to move forward and what to expect in the production side.
Well, and what's important in that too is you're not in a silo. And so, as the VAD, like you mentioned, Christy, you're working with your physical counterpart. And so you're having to make sure that, let's say the dirt hill you're making in the desert is matching the color of the sand that we're going to have, here physically. And one of the things that, we've said a lot about virtual production is it's okay to go into a shoot not knowing all the answers for something, but then you need to know what those things are. So for example, we may design an environment that has sand, and it's this, nice white looking sand. And then the sand that the art department brings in, they were only able to source sand that's more yellow. And so, if that were the case, we would be in a bad situation if we weren't able to change the color of our sand. However, planning to know that we may need to make these tweaks really helps us to be efficient. And that is a really good way that, we're able to collaborate with, the physical counterpart of our art departments.
Yeah,
Yep.
like even going into the prep side for that, knowing that you might have to adjust for exposures, you might have to change colors or textures, building your materials and your your assets in a way that you can kind of tweak that stuff on the fly to kind of really dial that stuff in to get that sand to match the right color or the right temperature or the right exposure. Like, will really help kind of blend that stuff together and kind of save time on set. So.
Yeah.
I mean, we just built a desert, and behind us there's still remnants from yesterday.
In case
that we're still
you
cleaning
can't
up.
tell, it's
And so we brought the sand in. We knew what color it was, and we tried to color match it when we were creating the environments. And then we had a whole art build day, basically. So we were building the art, and then we had the environment up on the wall, and we could match it. And then we would match it for a daytime lit look. And then when you go and change it to a nighttime scene, then the sand doesn't match again, So then on the fly, or on our pre-light day or art build day, we're going and finding the settings to change it to match it again. So the time of day even, you have to tweak. And so it's we're always walking this line of, yes, we need to change things on set and we need to manipulate the environment or change the sun or, but what can we do to save time, because all of those changes take time. It takes time to build a new set on a shoot day. It takes time to change, if you go from day to night. So we're trying to constantly plan ahead. And then we were talking through, if we're working on the wall and there's downtime, thinking through the shots that you don't necessarily need the wall. So if you're doing an overhead shot or tight shots of the environment, the practical build, having those in our back pocket. So if there is some changes on set, just moving to the next scene, what can we be shooting in the meantime when the wall's down,
I think as a producer, and what makes a good producer is you plan for the unknown. And, someone who's always shot on location or always shot green screen or studio, they've done it. And so they know what to anticipate. And virtual production is just unknown. There's so many things. And so that's the overwhelming part, I think, in the initial planning stages of I just don't even know what could go wrong or what I need to think of or what key crew members I need. You may have people in your back pocket that, when I go on this location, this person executes great. So what are the key positions that make for a successful shoot that I need to plan for? Where do I need to add money in my budget? Those kind of things are questions always in my mind because we're always doing that. We're hiding money away for whatever the rainy day plan needs to be, but we're used to what the rainy day plan is on location. It's a new rainy day plan here. From the producer perspective, your job is to make sure you're on time and on budget. And in order to do that, you have to really lean into what's most important and what's really driving the end result. And sometimes it's a creative and you just get to play all day for as long as you want. And that shot is what has to happen. So you're going to do anything. But other times you're limited by time, you're limited by budget. So where can we lean in and make wise choices on a virtual set to either save the money or save the time, or we're going to go all out to get that shot. So what are some things, what crew is essential in making sure, you want an experienced gaffer, you want somebody, what are those pivotal positions or key, if you would do it this way, it's going to save you a little bit of time. If you do it this way, we can save a little money. Those kind of things.
Yeah. So if you notice this volume has, this flat wall over here. And so 3 of our studios are this shape. And what we do to save time and come in for art build day is we build one set on this flat wall and then we build one set in the volume. And that way they're set up, we've pre-lit, we've seen the environments, we know exactly. So you can walk in day of, shoot here, and then immediately turn and shoot into the next scene, which I think is a huge time saver. A lot of our studios and other studios have several stages. So you could basically build your art on these several stages, especially for talent's sake, where you bring them in one shoot, then you move to the next shoot, move to the next shoot. And so I think there's a lot of value in smaller walls and smaller volumes, or where you can build 2 sets versus having one giant volume where you're kind of just building out this one environment, So I'm constantly looking at storyboards and working with the AD to be strategic on their shot lists and how can sometimes we've built 3 sets on one stage and one in the middle. And so what can we do? A lot of times I look at the amount of content that we have to shoot in one day. It's very scary. And I'm like, okay, let's be very strategic about how to line this up, because if we don't, we're gonna
So you look for the efficiency.
we're gonna run out of time. Yes.
Well, that brings up a good question is, in your experience, what is the average, and it changes from shoot to shoot, but what is like the general rule of thumb for how many setups you're able to put into a single day of, like, let's say a 12-hour day of shooting?
If you do a pre-light day, and the environments, we always optimize our environments ahead of time, so they're ready. So when you walk in on pre-light day, we're just hoping to just like tweak the environments. We usually can. Recently, we did 2 commercials in the morning. We did 2 commercials in the afternoon after lunch. They're like 15-minute spots.
And it's with the same client?
15-second spots. Yes, sorry. Same 15
She's
minutes.
really good at
Wow, we're
producing.
really good.
There's a lot
I was
of
like,
virtual
dang, this is
We've mastered it.
commercial car wash.
Yeah, or we've done in 3 days, we've done huge art builds where we've gone to like 8 different cities, in 3 days. Or we really pushed the limits the other day, like last month, and had 8 different environments, but like 15 different looks, scenes.
Wow.
In 3 days. So that was a lot. But I think like doing 1 or 2 scenes in the morning and then 1 or 2 scenes in the afternoon is really good. We've had music videos. People come in and shoot 4 music videos in one day, 2 music videos in one day, one before.
We had 12 at one place, but it took a lot of planning.
We did
Yeah,
have 12 music videos, so it just kind of depends. Or like when we do virtual events, and we're recording for that, we just roll through the different keynote speakers, so.
Well, and often, I found that the biggest deciding factor in how long a transition takes, or even how many setups you can fit into a day, is everything outside of the virtual, So, we can switch between environments pretty rapidly, actually. That's not a big time cost. What is the time cost is changing your camera setup, your lighting, art, all of those things. And that's why I think the point you brought up, Megan, about being able to do multiple setups on a single stage is extremely valuable. And a lot of that comes down to the planning and the logistics and what you're able to do on the pre-light.
Yeah.
But then, having a solid AD, back to your point, Christy, about those essential crew members, having a really solid AD, having as much as possible crew, like in your key roles, like your DP and your gaffer, who they aren't in the volume for the first time on the day of the shoot, or even the day of the pre-light, will give a massive advantage, because there are some differences in shooting in a space like this.
I think art change is the biggest time sucker.
It's kind of like a mini company move. So you
Yeah.
got to think of it like that.
Yeah.
So the more complex your art and your lighting setup is, and the disparity between the next setup, that's the amount of time that's going to take. So I like to explain it like a little company move.
Yeah.
And art is it's extremely important. It's we always say we've done our job if you don't notice the wall, or if you don't notice what's happening in the background, because that means that you're paying attention to the story and to what's happening with the characters, or the product, or whatever it might be. And art is a huge thing that helps to sell that. And so, if you're able to interact with different objects or things, that's extremely important. So
I think a cost-saving move on the art is being strategic about your shots and not showing the floor a lot.
Yep.
So like we've brought in a school bus before, but we didn't show the road that it drove on. So we could easily bring it in, shoot the content, and move it out and move to the next scene. Whereas if you're building out the floors, that's what I think really it costs a lot and takes a lot of time.
Or if you have to establish, we've done some beach scenes, and so we established feet in the sand on a tight, and literally the sand was like a 4x4 square. And then the rest of it, once you establish to the viewer where you are and you solidify, all right, I've got my toes in the sand, you never have to reference that at the end, because they remember that. So your establishing shot is very important.
Yeah.
But you can be strategic about that. For sure.
Well, and that's such a good point, that if you don't have the time or the budget to do a full art build like we just did, like Megan mentioned, yesterday this whole studio was full of sand, and it was great. It fit the creative vision extremely well. However, to your point, Christy, if you need to be more efficient and if you need to have more cost savings, you can get really creative with how you're shooting it. And either way, it totally beats out going to shoot on a beach. I since we've started using virtual production, I don't think I've been on a beach shoot, and I haven't missed it once. So very cool.
Just to circle back a last time to how much can you shoot in a day? I've been asked for the gamut of, over the past 3 days, we lived in one scene the whole time. Now we can spin the world. So the desert, like sometimes the sun's on this side, sometimes we flip it in the desert. So it looks like you're in a vast wilderness, but it was one physical setup. And then we've done the extreme of 12 music videos in a day or shooting 40 backgrounds for PGA Tour. But I think it always comes down to, well, what's most important? What do you really have to take away from it? So to do more content in a day takes a lot more strategic planning, a lot more coordination on the front end, and locking in decisions so that you can be very efficient in transitions on set. It also requires a little bit of over planning. So like with the PGA example, they gave us probably 60 different backgrounds that we were going to work from, some Unreal, some plates. So that they had options, and then they just chose, all right, well, we really want to do this one, so let's, and then if time was speeding up, we went through more, and if it wasn't, but we were ready with it. So the key is to be ready with more than you actually need if you want to have the ability to shoot more content. Where it gets difficult is a last minute idea of something you've never talked about before. And we've had that happen too. Or wait, can we add, this statue in the middle of this desert? Like, well, we could yesterday. If you want to wait a couple hours, we can. So kind of speed requires more planning. If you want to be able to embrace the moment, like you referenced, because you will, especially your first time on set, it'll be eye-opening to be like, oh, this is how all this works together. If I had known that. And then you kind of lean into that, like, oh, let's play with this reflection. Then you want to minimize the amount of content you're trying to shoot so that you can maximize the creativity with what you're doing in that moment. Yeah. So it's always a give and take.
Yeah, that is so true. I wouldn't call it a misconception, but the way that virtual production is marketed is you can do anything in the volume, which is true. You can do literally anything. You can put anything on these massive screens that you can imagine. However, when it comes down to your shoot, you have to plan. You have to know what that anything is. And so, not to say we haven't been in situations where we do our best to work miracles. And, I think that's one of our biggest points of pride. However, it's, it makes Kevin lose a little bit of hair. I won't have him take his hat off. But yeah.
No, but to kind of reiterate and go back to that is like, there is no set template for this stuff or how many number of backgrounds you can do in a day. I think the biggest thing with virtual production is it's problem solving.
Yep.
It's trying to figure out, all right, well, what is your scope? What are you trying to do? How can you be prepared for those things coming into the production side? So, having your options ready to go on set so you can flip through is like, all right, can we see what this looks like? Can we adjust this color temperature? Can we, kind of tweak this exposure or change this kind of time of day? Kind of having those thoughts all prepared and ready to go, seeing what your goals are, that'll determine kind of how many sets you can do in a day. And, what are your practical sets? How long does that take to flip? So really, that is like from beginning to end, it's problem solving.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Kevin. One thing that I wanted to talk about too is the post-production side of things. So knowing that you come from a post-production background long before virtual production even existed, I'm curious, what are some of the learnings you've had, and how, now that we're moving a lot of our post-production timeline to the front end of things, how does that affect the back end?
Yeah, that's a good question. With regards to a lot of the post, obviously, you are pushing a lot of things to the front end in the pre-production or the previs phase. That's not to say you're not doing a lot of effects on the back end. So depending on the project you need, there still might be some additional post, effects that you would want to play into that. It does, having a lot of your design and your environment stuff be final pixel in camera, as far as in-camera visual effects, that does help speed up and kind of condense that post-production time. But you might come into instances where you want to add maybe there's another sky or set extension that you would want to add to on the post side, or maybe there's additive effects that would be better on the post side where you're having your talents in frame, your practical sets in frame, and you could build those effects into that. So there is still a back and forth, even though it does, doing everything ahead of time on the Previz side, it does save you some time on the back end, but there's still a little bit of a back and forth that would play on the post side. And that's why I say, like, you're getting away from that linear workflow, and now you're more in this kind of like back and forth kind of ping pong kind of state where you're constantly doing things ahead of time, or you're still kind of looking to advance things on the back end.
Some questions I get, because a lot of people will come to us. It's obvious to consider virtual when you're considering green screen. And so on a shoot where you need ultra wide, naturally you would gravitate towards green screen. Is it possible to do, something wider than here that makes it worth bringing into here rather than doing green screen? What are you seeing on the post side? We're like, oh, thank God they did it on a virtual set that I don't have to deal with whatever that may be.
And I see a lot of that when you're working with cars or vehicles or in those regards. Like, you can get a lot of great content to where it feels like that car is moving or it's driving, but if you want to get wide, that's where you run into some more challenges that you need to solve with regards to, all right, the wheels need to be spinning. If you were to get the full shot of this car in this environment, then you have to consider the ground. Like, the ground should be moving if it's in a driving spot. So, you could still shoot your in-camera effects and still get that shot, but then you need to consider, all right, what do we need to extend? What do we need to add on the post side with regards to the wheels or the making the car feel like it's moving through that environment? And that could still be a good basis to kind of still shoot that, even though, it's not all final pixel perfect in camera. So there are additive things you can do on the back end to kind of create that or still make that wide scenic shot work.
Does it make it easier on your team to start from the point of it already being in the virtual environment in camera rather than green screen where you're having to totally build and key out?
I think it depends. I think there are situations where, yes, it is good having that kind of framework there. But there might be instances where, all right, it might be good to have a blue or a green screen back there with some additional tracking points. And what's nice about on Unreal is, like, you can create that green screen on the LED wall on the fly too. So inside your frustum, you can turn on the green screen, and then you have your green screen ready to go. So you can capture, say you want to capture a couple plates, you need a reference plate, or you want a basis to kind of work from. And then if you want that keyed out asset there, that you can easily kind of key it out and kind of roto, and then you have your kind of rotoed plate there, so to speak.
So behind is the green screen, but the rest of the environment, the rest of the wall is what?
The environment will still be there, but inside the frustum, which you would only see inside the camera, you would only see the green screen and then whatever the practical set is.
But yeah, I mean, you get all that benefit from the ambient lighting, and then you get the benefit of the green screen, because the reality is you don't always know what you want in the background, especially if it's some type of signage or, an example that I always think about is on, the last Avengers movie, when they were wearing all of their like time travel suits. They didn't know what the suits were going to look like, so they had to all wear mocap suits because they didn't know what they wanted their suits to look like, and that's just the reality. Is a lot of times that's the case, but to have the benefit of green screen and virtual production and in-camera visual effects with the ambient lighting is really valuable. One thing too I would add is the added benefit of doing work on the front end and how that actually impacts the speed and efficiency of post-production. Knowing that the environments that we're working in are they're 3D environments that you can manipulate and use in post-production, and also we're able to capture camera tracking data and all those things in stage. So maybe talk a little bit about that and what you're experiencing.
Yeah, so even going back to the example of driving shots, if you know that you need to do some post work on the back end, it's nice that within Unreal you can record that camera data. So instead of trying to solve for cameras or recreate that tracking information, being able to work inside of a 3D environment, record that data, and then be able to take that in the post and say, have your camera data right there. You don't need to solve for anything. You could, still work within the environment that you have, but then add the additional effects and stuff that you want on the back end. So it's nice being able to, you're essentially prevising what you need to do on post on the front end. So it's quite unique on how you can work with the.
But with flexibility for some change at
Yes.
post the shoot. So, that I think alleviates some fears of clients coming in because they are afraid, like, man, I got to commit and I got to commit early. But there is a little bit of flexibility still.
Yeah.
Or there can be if you plan for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another, jumping back to like time saving, cost saving in post, I love bringing in clients that have only shot green screen and they have that nightmare of, post work and the green screen. And then they come in for the first time and then their client is there as well. And their client can see exactly what
Yeah.
the shot
Yes.
is, and then a lot of times our directors, so many times our directors have gotten all of the footage from the day and put together like a rough edit and then showed it at the end of the shoot, which is so fun, and then we'll put it up on the wall sometimes and the crew gets to see exactly what we shot that day. And you basically have your rough edit already there. Client can already see it, and so just knowing that the client is already happy and
Yeah.
knows exactly what they're getting is
Well, I can't tell you how many
great.
times I've been on set on green screen sheets where I'm talking to a client and I'm saying, so just, imagine, a monkey over there, a mountain there, like whatever it might be, like, you're having to imagine everything, which if you're the person with the creative vision, that's relatively easy to do. But for everyone else in the room, it's a little more challenging to communicate that. But also, as the person who has the creative vision, sometimes when you're able to, or when you're in a green screen room and you're shooting that way, you don't have those happy accidents that tend to happen when you're on location, where you happen to, pan the camera a little to the left and you catch the light the right way and you're like, ooh, that looks really pretty. And that's something that in an ICVFX stage you get back that is kind of lost with green screen. So that's another really cool little thing. So
What our goal is to, really just help you get comfortable with this so it becomes an everyday tool, just like every other tool out there for production. But part of the struggle in the beginning is just in the environment build and that process. And so just assuring them that we'll be with you along the way. We do get a lot of clients that come to us not only to shoot in our studios, but to build their worlds. And so like, what does that look like, and how are we working with our clients to show them Previz, to get them to a comfortable place where they can see it coming together and kind of steps of approval?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a key aspect of that Previz phase, is getting, especially for first time people coming into the volume, being able to show them what things will look like in a stage is very vital. And we have digital representations of our volumes, our stages and stuff, so we can put that into our environment to kind of show them, hey, this is how we would kind of plot this out. Here's some proxy models of what our set could eventually look like. And then you could even get into the virtual cameras and start framing up your shots. So now you know how much depth you have. Now you know how things are going to frame in the environment. And you could see that on the digital representation of the LED wall. So being able to showcase that to clients and get them comfortable with the limitations or the different aspects of what you're looking ahead to when you get into production is key. And I think that helps settle any kind of nerves that clients have, that if they could start seeing things ahead of time before they get there, that'll help things in the long run.
Mm-hmm. I love bringing clients in on virtual scouts.
Yeah.
So, I'll get on with Kevin and he'll have the Unreal environment up on Zoom and we just go through the environment and kind of show them. And I think that if they've never shot in virtual production, that really gives them a good glimpse and grasp of what they're actually working with.
It gets them engaged and involved too. So you can kind of just flying around the environment tends to wow people a lot. And you can see, here's the different, all right, we can shoot over here in kind of this realm and then flip it 180 and just kind of see what's over on the other side.
Yeah. Or if you have several locations that you're shooting in 1 or 2 days, and so we're location scouting virtually and we're going from Miami to Chicago to the Alps to the beach, and 2 hours.
Yeah.
And the people are like, oh my God, that was amazing. So it's really fun.
Cool. Well, the last thing that I wanted to talk about was when it comes specifically to environment designs where we're recreating an actual location. So, we refer to this a lot as a digital twin, which has a lot of implications. Let's say there is a store, or let's say even a mountain or some kind of actual place that there's a physical reference to that we're trying to recreate. Times Square is another really good example of this iconic location that everyone knows. What does that process look like if we are trying to create like an exact replication of something?
Yeah, so for specific locations that you're trying to recreate, there's several ways you can kind of try to approach that. You can look into LiDAR or photogrammetry to kind of get your, like a base scan for what that environment can be, and get those accurate details, get those, how's the lighting hitting, or even pulling textures from that. But then, say you are scanning or doing photogrammetry, but you can also build on top of that. So you can still source from your original resources if you need trees or benches, parking signs, or whatnot. It all kind of is like, there's a number of ways to kind of achieve it. But I think, for that accurate representation, being able to scan your environments is a great starting point to get in, to kind of build out those scenes that need to be recreated.
Okay, and Christy, from your perspective, why is that something that has been valuable to our clients to do those digital twins?
Oh man, it goes the whole gamut from concepting or building a concept. So we've had some companies come in and literally they go through a whole physical build just for the CEO to come in and hate it. And they've spent months and millions of dollars on this build where we can help them visualize, and they can kind of float the idea all the way up from the design level up through the executive board and get full approval, and they can really get a sense for what it's like. We can have them come in the studio and kind of place countertops and things so they can really like, oh yes, I like that, and approve before they commit to this huge build. But when the location already exists, the pain of having to shut down a store, overnight shoots, having to work around patrons in an area and be an inconvenience to them, or just having tight spaces. So we've shot in a lot of hospitals, and that's tough to get in those tight operating rooms, to get in, an imaging room and get the shot you want. So here you have wide open space, but you can shrink it visually in camera, but your crew can be exactly in the right place, or you can get a shot that's not even possible. So we've done some stuff with like airplanes, to where you'll bring in a model and you'll model whatever is around, but you would never get that shot in air. So it's getting your crew in the right place at the right time, that if you were forced to on location, either would be a pain in the butt or not possible. So
very cool. Yeah, I think that's really an exciting aspect of the future of virtual production that no one really thought of when this technology is being developed. But the idea that you can replicate real environments for not only production, but for concepting, for simulation, all those things is just, we're barely scratching the surface of what's possible with that. So very exciting stuff.
I'm working with some clients right now on these digital twins for their stores, and their chains. And they have to shoot during the day, they can't work overnight, and they have to let the customers keep shopping. So when we presented that idea to them, they were like, we're sold already, because I'm so sick and tired of
awesome.
pausing, helping someone find whatever they need, and then going back to it, and working around them, and then, or working overnight. Maybe they do have to go in overnight every night. And so these production teams are just so tired of it. And so
I would say it also, if you're a production company and ad agency, it can help you grow your account too. You may just be, I know that some people focus on internal content, some people focus on commercial, but you can really grow what you can do for your client and touch every segment of video, because video is used for so much of what we do beyond just advertising. And I know the mind goes to virtual production for movies or commercials, and that's pretty it. But content training, simulations. We've been talking to the military about how we can use this for trainings and those kind of things. So there's just such a vast use case that as you and your client see it, you'll start brainstorming, and it'll actually grow your services for them.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, on that note, I think we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for joining us, for learning a little bit about scheduling and logistics, and even a little creative. Hopefully you got some good info to take back. And thank you so much to our panelists for being a part of this and taking the time. I know we have a lot of really busy schedules that we coordinated to make this happen. Megan came down from Nashville. Christy and Kevin are over from Tampa. So really appreciate you guys coming out and being a part of this.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Make sure you check us out on social media and at our website at view.network. We're doing all kinds of education, workshops, live streams, podcasts all the time. So it's a great source of knowledge for all things virtual production. And thank you so much for joining us.